Hello everyone. I hope you're having a great day. Today's story begins with betrayal, power, and a woman who refused to be broken. When a black woman's painful past is exposed at work, a powerful CEO steps forward and everything changes. If you enjoy emotional stories about resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what happens next. New York City. Whitmore Solutions, Inc. 350 Fifth Ave, New York, NY 10118. Monday, 9 o'clock a.m. The conference room on the 42nd floor was built for celebration. Glass walls, Manhattan skyline, a long table that reflected power like a mirror. At the front, a massive screen waited behind a podium, glowing softly as if it already knew what it was about to show. Employees filed in, dressed sharp, smiles practiced. This was the monthly sales summit, where winners were applauded, numbers were worshipped, and reputations were quietly decided. At exactly 9:02, the room rose as Alexander Alex Whitmore, the CEO, entered. Tall, controlled, charcoal gray suit, no tie. A man who didn't waste words, because he never had to. He took his seat at the head of the table. His gaze swept the room once, and the noise died instantly. Then the sales director spoke into the mic. "All right, team, let's start with what matters. Results." The screen flashed. Graphs, ranking, a leaderboard, and at the very top, Maya Robinson, Senior Sales Executive, highest monthly revenue. A few claps started, polite at first, then stronger. Some people smiled like they meant it. Most smiled like they were forced. Maya sat near the middle of the room, posture straight, hands folded on the table as if holding her own pulse down. She was 29. Black. Slim and elegant. Natural curls pulled into a low bun. Navy suit tailored perfectly. White blouse crisp. Calm face. Sharp eyes. From the outside, she looked untouchable. From the inside, she was bracing for impact. Because she knew what success does in a room full of people who wanted it more than you. The sales director continued. Maya has now led the company in sales for 3 consecutive quarters. Unmatched closing rate, highest retention. Applause again, louder but colder. Maya nodded once. A professional smile. Nothing extra. Then the sales director gestured toward the front row. Claire Thompson, sales manager, will present this quarter's culture recognition. Maya's stomach tightened. Claire Thompson stood with a smooth, confident smile that never reached her eyes. Blonde hair long and straight, designer beige dress, heels that clicked like punctuation. Claire took the remote, turned toward the screen. "Thank you," Claire said sweetly. "And congratulations, Maya, truly." Her tone sounded like honey, but Maya heard the steel beneath it. Claire clicked. The screen changed. Not to a trophy, not to a bonus, not to a culture award. Instead, a grainy photo appeared. A rundown apartment hallway, peeling paint, dim yellow lighting, a chipped door with fading numbers, the kind of place no one in this room had ever lived. A second image followed. A street sign, Mott Haven, Bronx, NY 11454. Maya's breath stopped. A ripple of confusion moved through the room. Claire's voice remained calm, almost playful. "It's important," she said, "that we celebrate authenticity." Maya's fingers went cold. The third image appeared. A younger girl, black, maybe 15, wearing worn clothes. Tired eyes, standing beside a woman who looked exhausted. The caption below the image read, "Maya Robinson, Public Assistance Record, Archived." The room went silent. Not polite silence. Shock silence. The kind that makes your ears ring. Maya stared at the screen, unable to move. Her past, her shame, her survival, was being displayed like a product demo, and around her, people began to whisper, "No way. She's from the projects? That's her? So she lied?" I knew something about her felt off. Maya's chest tightened until breathing hurt. Claire turned slightly, facing the room. "I just think," she said lightly, "it's inspiring, you know, to see how far someone can climb." A few nervous laughs, quick and cruel, popped like sparks. Claire's eyes flicked to Maya. "And maybe it reminds us," Claire continued, "that not everyone here represents the Whitmore image." Maya felt the floor tilt. Her vision blurred at the edges. She wanted to stand up and speak, to defend herself, to explain that she didn't lie. She survived. But no words came. Because in a room like this, explanations sound like weakness. And weakness gets eaten alive. Maya lowered her eyes to the table. Her hands trembled slightly. Then she heard a chair move. Slow, deliberate. The sound cut through the whispers like a blade. Alex Whitmore stood. He didn't rush. He didn't look angry. He looked controlled, which was worse. He walked to the front of the room, eyes on the screen, then on Claire. "Turn it off," Alex said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Claire blinked, still smiling. "Alex, I was just—" "Turn it off," he repeated. Calm. Final. Claire's smile faltered. She clicked the remote. The screen went black. The room held its breath. Alex faced the employees. "Let me be clear," he said. "This meeting was about performance and strategy, not public humiliation." He turned toward Claire. "You use private information to shame an employee in front of the entire company." Claire tried to recover. "It was meant to be motivational." Alex cut her off, voice still quiet. "No," he said. "It was meant to hurt." He turned to the room again. "And if anyone here thinks poverty is a stain," Alex continued, "then you don't understand what excellence looks like." Maya's throat tightened. Alex's gaze landed on her, briefly, not soft, but steady. "As of today," Alex said, "Maya Robinson is not on trial. The culture that allowed this is." The room was frozen. Claire's face had gone pale. Maya sat motionless, heart pounding. Because Alex Whitmore had just protected her. But now the entire company would be watching her, waiting to see if she broke. If you're listening right now, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Have you ever had your worst fear exposed in front of people who wanted to see you fall? Because in the next scene, the whispers turn into attacks. Claire doubles down, and Maya will be forced to choose: disappear in shame, or fight back with the truth. By 11:30 a.m., the humiliation had already left the conference room. It moved faster than elevators. It slipped into Slack messages, whispered in break rooms, and traveled down polished hallways like smoke that never fully clears. Maya Robinson sat at her desk in the sales bullpen, staring at her screen without seeing a single word. Her inbox filled with emails. "Congrats on the numbers. Quick question about Q4 pipeline. Need your signature on the renewal." Normal work, normal language. But the air around her was not normal. Every laugh nearby felt aimed at her. Every pause in conversation felt like a blade being sharpened. She could feel people watching, pretending they weren't. She kept her posture perfect. Back straight, face calm, jaw set. Because if she showed even a crack, they'd call it proof. Proof that she didn't belong. Across the floor, Claire Thompson stood at the coffee machine, talking quietly to Brian Keller. Their voices were low, but their eyes kept lifting toward Maya. Claire smiled like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just dragged a woman's childhood into a corporate meeting and set it on fire. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "So you really grew up in the Bronx? That's wild." Another buzz. "Did you lie on your background check?" Then another. "How much did you have to sleep with to get here?" Maya's fingers froze on the desk. Her chest tightened. That was the real punch. Not the photo. Not the neighborhood name. This. They weren't just mocking her past. They were rewriting her success as something dirty. She turned her phone face down, hands trembling slightly beneath the table where no one could see. A voice sounded behind her. "Hey." Maya looked up. It was Nina Patel, an analyst from finance. Early 30s. Quiet. Always kind. Nina's eyes held sympathy, but she spoke carefully, like she didn't want to make Maya feel smaller. "You okay?" Nina asked. Maya's lips formed a professional smile. "I'm fine." Nina hesitated. "If you need anything." Maya nodded once. "Thanks." Nina walked away, and Maya felt the loneliness deepen, because even kindness had to tiptoe around her now. At 12:15, Maya stood and walked toward the restroom. As she passed the glass-walled meeting room, she saw Alex Whitmore inside with two senior executives. Their faces were serious. His posture was calm, but his jaw was tight. He was doing something. She knew that. But in Maya's world, doing something didn't guarantee safety. It just meant the battle had started. In the restroom, Maya locked herself into a stall and finally let her breath shake out. Her hands covered her mouth. She didn't cry. Not because she didn't want to, because she couldn't afford to. She leaned her head against the wall and forced herself to remember the rules she'd learned long before Whitmore Solutions ever existed in her life. Rule 1. Don't let them see you bleed. Rule 2. Don't give them a confession. Rule 3. If you have to break, do it alone. Her mind drifted, unwanted, back to South Bronx. Mott Haven. A small apartment with radiators that barely worked. A mother who smiled through exhaustion. A childhood where luxury meant the lights stayed on all month. Maya had clawed her way out. Scholarships. 2 jobs in college. Nights studying while her friends slept. She didn't cheat. She didn't beg. She didn't seduce her way into a career. She earned every dollar and every win. So why did it still feel like she was the one on trial? She washed her hands and stared into the mirror. Her reflection looked flawless, but her eyes carried the truth. She returned to her desk. At 1:00 p.m., Slack lit up. Someone had created a new group chat. Whitmore. T. Maya didn't join, but she didn't have to. She could see coworkers smirking at their screens, heads leaning together, fingers typing quickly, a few glances toward her, then away. At 1:22, a junior sales rep named Logan walked past Maya and muttered under his breath, "Projects to penthouse." His friend snorted. Maya's jaw tightened. She kept typing. At 2:05, Brian Keller approached her desk with fake casualness. "Maya," he said, leaning on the divider like he belonged there. "Quick question." Maya didn't look up. "What is it?" Brian smiled. "Just curious. Did you always want to do sales? Or did you just need to escape?" Maya's fingers paused. She looked up slowly. Brian's smile widened like he enjoyed the discomfort. "What do you mean?" Maya asked. Brian shrugged. "You know, some people are hungry enough to do anything." Maya stared at him. The entire bullpen seemed to quiet. People were listening. Brian leaned closer, voice softer. "No offense. It's kind of inspiring. Bronx Girl becomes top closer. That's a movie." Maya's voice stayed even. "Are you done?" Brian chuckled. "Relax. I'm complimenting you." Maya held his gaze. Move. Brian's smile faltered. He straightened. Touchy. He walked away, but he left the poison behind. By late afternoon, Maya's calendar filled with unexpected meeting invites. HR sync, 15-minute compliance review, 20-minute. Sales ops check-in. Maya's stomach tightened as she opened the HR invite. It wasn't from HR, it was from Claire. Maya stared at the screen, then declined it. Immediately, another invite popped up. Mandatory check-in. Maya's jaw tightened. She stood and walked toward Claire's office. Claire sat behind a glass door like she lived there. She looked up as Maya entered, lips forming a sweet smile. Maya, Claire said. There you are. Maya closed the door softly. Stop inviting me. Claire tilted her head. We need to talk. People are concerned. Maya's eyes narrowed. Concerned about what? Claire folded her hands. About honesty. About image. About whether you misrepresented yourself. Maya's pulse spiked. I didn't. Claire smiled like she enjoyed this. Then why hide it? Maya's voice stayed controlled. Because it's none of their business. Claire leaned forward. This is a high-profile firm. Our clients are sensitive. They don't want what? Maya cut in low. A black woman who grew up poor? Claire's smile tightened. Don't twist my words. Maya stepped closer to the desk. Say it clearly. Claire's eyes flicked for a second. Fear. Then she recovered. I'm saying, Claire said, voice calm, that your background could be distracting. Maya's laugh was soft, bitter. You mean inconvenient? Claire's smile sharpened. I mean reality. Maya's hands clenched. You humiliated me. Claire shrugged. I exposed the truth. Big difference. Maya stared at her. Then Claire's voice softened, almost sympathetic. Look, Claire said, this doesn't have to get uglier. If you resign quietly, we can spin it as a personal transition. You'll keep your dignity. Maya's blood went cold. Resign. That was the plan. That was why Claire did it in front of everyone. To break her. To isolate her. To make her quit. Maya's voice dropped. You want me gone. Claire smiled gently. I want the team stable. Maya leaned in, eyes sharp. You're afraid. Claire's smile twitched. Of what? Maya held her gaze. That the girl from the Bronx is better than you. Claire's expression hardened. Maya, she said, voice icy now. You're not untouchable. Don't forget who owns influence here. Maya straightened. I already know, Maya said quietly. That's why I'm not leaving. Claire's eyes flashed. Then you're forcing me to escalate. Maya's stomach tightened, but her voice stayed calm. Do it, she said. She turned and walked out. The moment she stepped into the hallway, her phone buzzed again. A new message. From unknown. If you don't quit, we'll make sure the whole city knows where you came from. Maya's hands went numb. She looked up. Across the bullpen, Alex Whitmore stepped out of his office, eyes scanning the floor like he could feel the shift. For a split second, his gaze landed on Maya. And in that glance, Maya didn't see pity. She saw calculation, protection, and something else. Anger, controlled and quiet. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Have you ever been pushed to quit because people couldn't stand your success? Because in the next scene, Claire will escalate exactly like she promised. HR, compliance, background checks. She'll try to destroy Maya with paperwork. And Alex Whitmore will decide whether he's protecting Maya as an employee or because he's starting to feel something deeper. Tuesday morning arrived with a false calm. The skyline outside 350 Fifth Ave glowed clean and bright, like the city had never done anything cruel. Inside Whitmore Solutions, Cruelty wore a suit and carried a clipboard. Maya Robinson walked in at 8:12 a.m., badge tapping the scanner with a soft beep that sounded too normal for what she was stepping into. She could feel it immediately. People weren't whispering as much today. They were watching. Quiet. Strategic. Whispers are messy. Whispers leak. But a coordinated takedown? That's silent. Maya reached her desk and saw a printed envelope waiting on her keyboard. No sender name, just bold letters. Compliance review. Immediate action required. Her stomach tightened. She opened it carefully. Inside were 3 pages. A routine audit notice, a request for documents, a scheduled meeting with HR and compliance at 10 o'clock a.m. Her name printed cleanly at the top. Maya's eyes scanned the page, steady, but her hands went cold, because this wasn't routine. This was a weapon. She glanced across the sales floor. Claire Thompson was already at her desk, calm as a statue, typing like the world was perfectly normal. Brian Keller leaned near Claire's chair, murmuring something. They both looked up at the exact same moment and smiled, small, satisfied. Maya looked away. At 8:30, she opened her laptop and pulled up her performance dashboard. Her numbers were still untouchable. Pipeline strong. Renewals solid. Closing rate dominating the entire division. They couldn't beat her at sales, so they were going to beat her at survival. At 9:10, Maya's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. HR isn't your friend. Quit before they walk you out. She didn't reply. She didn't even flinch. She simply took a screenshot and saved it into a folder labeled Evidence. Her screen showed a new Slack message from Claire Thompson. Maya, please confirm attendance at 10:00 compliance review. Mandatory. Maya's jaw tightened. She typed back one line. Confirmed. At 9:42, as she was drafting an email to a client, someone approached her desk. A man in a dark suit with a visitor badge clipped to his lapel. Not company staff. External. He smiled politely, but it didn't reach his eyes. Ms. Robinson? He asked. Maya looked up. Yes. I'm Daniel Voss from Corporate Compliance Consulting, he said, extending a card. I'll be assisting with your review. Assisting with your review, not the review. Maya took the card calmly. Understood. Voss nodded. We'll see you at 10. He walked away. Maya watched him go, heartbeat steady but heavy. A message popped into her memory. Her mother's voice, years ago, in a cramped Bronx kitchen. People don't destroy you with fists, baby. They destroy you with systems. At 9:55, Maya stood, smoothed her blazer, and walked toward the conference room. The hallway felt too quiet. A few employees glanced up as she passed, eyes dropping quickly like they didn't want to be caught watching a public execution. When Maya entered the room, 4 people were already seated. Kendra Miles, HR Director Daniel Voss, External Compliance Consultant. Claire Thompson, Sales Manager. Brian Keller. Witness, sitting quietly, smug. Maya's stomach tightened at Brian's presence. This was not a neutral review. This was theater. Kendra smiled with professional stiffness. Maya, thank you for coming. Maya sat. Let's begin. Claire leaned back, arms folded, face composed. Daniel Voss opened a folder. Robinson, he said calmly. This is a standard compliance verification following concerns raised about representation. Maya's eyes narrowed slightly. Concerns raised by whom? Kendra's voice was soft. We can't disclose the source. Claire's lips twitched, almost amused. Maya nodded slowly. Then we can stick to facts. Voss adjusted his glasses. First, did you disclose your previous addresses accurately on your hiring documents? Maya's voice was steady. Yes. Voss slid a sheet forward. Then can you explain why this address, he tapped the paper, was not included? Maya glanced down. It was a shelter address, a transitional housing program, a place she stayed briefly after her mother got evicted when Maya was 17. Her throat tightened. Not because she was ashamed, she'd done her shame already, because she knew what they were doing. They weren't hunting fraud, they were hunting discomfort. Maya looked up. Because it was temporary housing for minors, I did not list it as a permanent address. Claire sighed dramatically. Convenient. Maya's gaze snapped to Claire. I didn't ask for your commentary. Kendra raised a hand. Maya held Kendra's gaze. If this is an investigation, then keep it professional. Brian chuckled softly. She's defensive. Maya turned toward Brian slowly. I'm precise, Voss continued. Second, did you ever falsify employment history? Maya didn't blink. No. Voss slid another document forward. We found a gap. Maya leaned in. That gap was college, 2 majors, 2 jobs. My transcripts can verify my enrollment. Claire tilted her head. And your income then? Maya looked at Claire, voice low. What does my income have to do with my performance now? Claire smiled. Image. Maya's jaw tightened. She looked at Kendra. So this isn't about compliance. It's about whether I make people comfortable. Kendra hesitated. It's about risk mitigation. Maya's voice stayed calm. Then say it. Say you think poverty is risk. Silence. Voss cleared his throat and moved on quickly. Third, there are allegations you may have accessed confidential client data improperly. Maya's eyes narrowed. That's false. Brian leaned forward. Is it? Maya turned to him. Name a client. Name a date. Brian smirked. We're in a review. You don't control the process. Maya's stomach tightened. This was escalating. They were building a case that didn't need to be true, just plausible enough to justify removal. Maya leaned back and exhaled slowly. Then she did something no one expected. She opened her laptop and turned it slightly toward the table. I anticipated this, she said calmly. Claire's eyes flickered. Anticipated what? Maya clicked a folder labeled Evidence and spoke in a measured voice. Since yesterday, I've received multiple anonymous messages threatening to expose my background unless I resign. I documented each one, screenshots, timestamps, and metadata. Kendra's eyes widened. Voss leaned forward, suddenly interested. Maya continued. I also documented your repeated mandatory meeting invites created under HR labels, despite not being sent by HR. Claire's face tightened. That's ridiculous. Maya's gaze was steady. You're welcome to deny it. The audit logs won't. Brian scoffed. You think you're smart? Maya's voice dropped. I think you're sloppy. Claire's cheeks flushed. Kendra glanced between them, uneasy. Maya, you're suggesting internal harassment. Maya nodded. I'm stating it. Voss looked at Kendra. If harassment is involved, this is no longer a routine review. Claire leaned forward, voice icy. So now you're playing victim? Maya's eyes flashed. You humiliated me publicly. Now you're trying to remove me privately. I'm not playing anything. Brian's smile disappeared. Careful. Maya's tone remained calm. I am. The room went quiet again. Then the door opened. The temperature in the room shifted instantly. Alex Whitmore stepped in. No announcement, no knock, just presence. He scanned the table. Kendra, Voss, Claire, Brian, then looked at Maya. "Continue," Alex said, voice low. Kendra stood slightly. "Alex, this is a compliance." Alex didn't look at her. "I know what it's labeled." He pulled a chair and sat at the end of the table like a judge entering his courtroom. His gaze went to Claire. "Why are you in a compliance review?" Claire blinked. "I'm her manager." Alex's voice stayed even. "Managers do not sit in compliance reviews unless there is a performance issue." Claire's mouth opened, then closed. Alex looked at Brian. "And you?" Brian shrugged. "I'm a witness." Alex's eyes narrowed. "To what?" Brian's confidence faltered. "To concerns." Alex's voice hardened slightly. "Concerns raised by you and Claire?" Silence. Alex turned to Voss. "Mr. Voss, what evidence exists that Ms. Robinson violated policy?" Voss hesitated. "At this time, we're verifying allegations." Alex nodded once. "So you have nothing?" Voss swallowed. "Not yet." Alex's gaze returned to Claire. "Then why are you attacking my top performer?" Claire forced a smile. "I'm not attacking anyone. I'm protecting the company." Alex leaned forward slowly, voice calm but deadly. "You don't protect this company by humiliating a woman for her past," he said. "You protect it by producing results and behaving like a professional." Claire's face went pale. Alex looked at Kendra. "End this review. Now." Kendra hesitated. "Alex, procedures." Alex's eyes held hers. "Now." Kendra nodded stiffly. "Understood." Voss closed his folder slowly. Brian shifted in his seat, suddenly uneasy. Claire's voice sharpened. "Alex, you're overreacting." Alex turned to her with quiet intensity. "No," he said. "You're underestimating how much I dislike bullying." The word landed like a hammer. Maya sat perfectly still, heart pounding. Because Alex didn't just walk in, he chose a side. And when the CEO chooses a side, the war becomes public. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Have you ever watched someone try to destroy you with bureaucracy and smiles? Because in the next scene, Claire won't back down. She'll leak documents, twist narratives, and try to turn the entire board against Maya. And Maya will face the one thing she fears more than losing her job: losing control of her own story. Wednesday arrived like a knife wrapped in silk. Maya Robinson walked into Whitmore Solutions at 8:05 a.m. and immediately felt it, an unnatural quiet on the sales floor. Not the quiet of focus, the quiet of people watching a fire spread and pretending their hands aren't warm. Heads bent over phones, screens tilted away. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when she passed. Maya kept walking, posture straight, face unreadable. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Her calendar was empty. That alone was wrong. Maya never had an empty calendar. She was the company's highest producer. Clients needed her. Teams leaned on her. An empty calendar meant someone had cleared it, or someone had decided she didn't exist today. Maya's phone buzzed. A message from Nina Patel. "Nina. Don't open Slack. Please, come to my desk." Maya's stomach tightened. She stood, walked across the floor, and found Nina sitting stiffly, face pale. Nina looked up at her and swallowed. "Maya, it's bad." Maya's voice stayed calm. "Tell me." Nina turned her monitor slightly. On the screen was a company-wide Slack post from an anonymous account. A single message pinned at the top of a public channel. Whitmore's top seller is a fraud. Below it, images, screenshots, old, personal, ugly pieces of her life cut into a collage. A photo of a rundown building hallway, a shelter intake form with her name partially visible, a blurred snapshot of her as a teenager in a worn jacket, and worst of all, a cropped picture of her mother, Linda Robinson, sitting on a curb with grocery bags, exhaustion in her eyes. Under the images, one line. How did she get here? Who did she pay? Who did she sleep with? Maya's vision narrowed. Her skin went cold, then hot. Nina whispered, "Someone leaked it externally too." Maya blinked once. Externally. Nina clicked another tab. A gossip blog post. A headline that made Maya's stomach drop. Empire State Execu's rags to riches lie exposed inside Whitmore's dirty secret. The comments were already filling with poison. She doesn't belong in those offices. I knew she was hiding something. People like her always scam their way up. Send her back where she came from. Maya's fingers went numb. This wasn't just workplace cruelty anymore. This was public degradation. This was the entire city invited to laugh. Nina's voice shook. "I'm so sorry." Maya nodded slowly, unable to speak. She returned to her desk and sat down. Her inbox exploded. Not client emails, not pipeline updates. Press inquiries. Unknown numbers calling. Someone had dug through her life and tossed it into the street like trash. A new email appeared. From Board Liaison. Subject, Urgent, Crisis Meeting. 9:30. Maya's stomach twisted. Crisis meeting. Not sales meeting. Not strategy. Crisis. At 9:08, her phone rang. A private line. She stared at the screen. Alex Whitmore. Maya answered quietly. "Yes." Alex's voice was low, steady. "Where are you?" "At my desk." "Don't move," he said. "I'm coming." The line went dead. Maya sat perfectly still. Around her, co-workers pretended to work, but she could feel their eyes. Some looked guilty. Most looked entertained. Because humiliation is a drug to people who have never been humiliated. At 9:20, Alex Whitmore walked out of his office. His steps were calm, but his eyes were different today. Not just controlled, cold. He moved toward Maya's desk and stopped. "Come with me," he said. Maya stood. As they walked, conversations died, phones lowered. The entire sales floor watched them leave as if this was the moment they'd been waiting for. Alex didn't look at anyone. He didn't have to. His silence was a warning. They entered a private elevator and rode up in quiet. Maya stared forward, breathing steady through pain. Alex spoke once. "Did you leak anything?" Maya's voice was flat. "No." "I know," he said. That "I know" landed in her chest like something dangerous. Because belief is rare when you've been poor. Belief is expensive. The elevator opened to a conference room on the executive floor. Inside were 4 people. Kendra Miles, HR, the general counsel. 2 board representatives. On the large screen, the blog post, the Slack leak, a timeline of spread. Kendra looked up. "Alex?" Alex didn't sit. He stood at the head of the room like a man about to break glass. "Explain," he said. The general counsel spoke. "Someone posted internal materials on an external site. It's reputational risk." A board rep, Mr. Halpern, leaned back. "The story is gaining traction. We're being tagged. Clients are asking questions." Maya sat at the end of the table, hands folded, face calm. Inside, her chest was screaming. Mr. Halpern glanced at her. "Ms. Robinson, he said, voice polite but sharp. Is any of it false? Maya's jaw tightened. She could lie. She could say it was fake. But her life had taught her something. Once you start lying, people own you forever. Maya lifted her eyes. It's true, she said. I grew up poor. I lived in Mott Haven. I spent time in transitional housing when I was a minor. My mother worked herself into the ground. Silence. Mr. Halpern's lips tightened. And you didn't disclose this. Maya's voice stayed controlled. My childhood address is not a compliance matter. Another board rep, Ms. Rivera, leaned forward. The concern is perception. Maya nodded once. Perception is not truth. Mr. Halpern sighed. Clients don't care about philosophy. They care about image. Alex Whitmore finally spoke. And our image, he said calmly, is built on results. He turned toward the screen, then back to the board. Maya Robinson has generated more revenue than any salesperson in this company for 3 straight quarters, Alex said. No policy violations, no fraud, no misconduct. Mr. Halpern lifted a hand. Alex, it's not about her numbers, it's about the narrative. Alex's gaze sharpened, then changed the narrative. The room fell quiet. Alex leaned forward slightly. Someone committed a crime, he said. They accessed and leaked private information about an employee. That is the crisis. Kendra hesitated. We don't know who it was. Alex's voice was steady. We will. The general counsel nodded. We can initiate an internal investigation. IT forensics. Slack logs. Mr. Halpern frowned. In the meantime, we need to contain the story. Perhaps place Ms. Robinson on leave. Maya's stomach dropped. There it was. The quiet removal. The polite banishment. Maya's voice stayed calm, but her hands tightened under the table. On leave for what? Mr. Halpern shrugged. To protect the company. Maya's eyes narrowed. Or to protect your comfort. Alex's gaze flicked to her. Quick approval, almost invisible. Then Alex turned back to the board. No leave, he said. Mr. Halpern stiffened. Alex, no leave, Alex repeated. If you put her on leave, you validate the smear. Ms. Rivera leaned back. Then what do you suggest? Alex's voice lowered. We go on record. The room froze. The general counsel blinked. Go on record. How? Alex looked at Maya. Maya, he said, will you speak? Maya's throat tightened. Speak. To the company? To the press? To the entire city? Her instincts screamed no, because speaking invites judgment. But silence had never protected her. Silence only gave people room to invent her. Maya's voice was low. Yes. Mr. Halpern frowned. This is risky. Alex looked at him like he was bored of fear. Cowardice is riskier, Alex said. He turned toward the general counsel. Draft a statement. Full support. Condemn harassment. Announce investigation. Kendra inhaled. We'll need to coordinate with PR. Alex nodded. Do it. Then he looked at Maya. You're not going to apologize for being poor, he said quietly. Maya's chest tightened. No, she whispered. Alex's gaze held hers, steady and fierce. Good, he said, because I won't let them turn your survival into a scandal. The meeting ended with rapid movement, calls made, emails drafted, IT teams activated. But the real storm was outside this room, and Maya knew it, because Claire Thompson still walked the floors downstairs, and Claire would not stop at a blog post. Claire wanted Maya to break, to resign, to disappear. As Maya and Alex stepped into the elevator, Maya finally spoke, voice barely controlled. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Alex stared forward. "Because it's wrong," he said. Maya's eyes stung. "That's not enough reason for people like you." Alex's jaw tightened slightly. Then he looked at her. "Maybe it's more than one reason," he said quietly. The doors opened. They stepped back into the world where everyone was watching. And now, the whole company knew. The CEO had chosen Maya Robinson, which meant the next attack wouldn't be whispers. It would be war. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below, should someone's childhood be used against them at work? Because in the next scene, Claire makes her boldest move yet. She tries to turn the board against Alex himself. And Maya will have to decide if she's willing to stand in the spotlight and tell the world who she really is. Thursday morning did not arrive quietly. It arrived with lawyers. Maya Robinson stood outside the executive boardroom on the 48th floor of Whitmore Solutions, staring at the frosted glass doors as if they were the gates to a courtroom. Her reflection stared back at her. Calm face, steady posture, navy suit pressed to perfection. Inside, men and women who had never worried about rent were deciding whether she was worth the trouble. Alex Whitmore stood beside her, hands relaxed at his sides, expression unreadable. "You don't have to go in," he said quietly. Maya turned to him. "Yes, I do." Alex studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Then we go in together." The doors opened. The boardroom was full, not just board members this time, but outside counsel, senior advisors, and two unfamiliar faces at the far end of the table. Claire Thompson sat among them, not as a guest, as a witness. Maya's stomach tightened. Claire looked composed, confident. She met Maya's eyes briefly and smiled, not sweetly, but victoriously. Alex's jaw hardened. The chairwoman, Elaine Porter, spoke first. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," she said. "We are here to address a serious reputational issue." Maya sat. Alex remained standing for a beat longer than necessary, an unspoken reminder of where power truly sat, then took his seat. Elaine's gaze moved to Maya. "Robinson," she said, measured, "your personal history has become public." Maya nodded once. "Yes." Elaine folded her hands. "And the press is framing it as deception." Alex leaned forward. "Incorrect. The press is framing it as a scandal because someone fed them a narrative." Elaine raised a brow. "Which brings us to the source." All eyes shifted to Claire. Claire straightened. "I've cooperated fully," she said smoothly. "I was concerned about compliance and transparency." Maya's fingers tightened under the table. Elaine looked to Claire. "You initiated the internal inquiry." Claire nodded. "Yes." Elaine's voice cooled. "And you had access to internal systems that later leaked externally." Claire smiled thinly. "Coincidence?" Alex let out a quiet breath through his nose. "Coincidence doesn't forward metadata," he said calmly. The general counsel cleared his throat. IT forensics traced the initial Slack leak to a device registered to Claire Thompson. The room froze. Claire's smile cracked. "That's impossible," she said quickly. "My laptop was accessed by multiple people." Alex's eyes locked on her. "Name them." Claire hesitated. I don't recall." Elaine's voice sharpened. "Ms. Thompson, are you suggesting your credentials were compromised?" Claire swallowed. "I'm suggesting this is being exaggerated." Maya spoke for the first time. "This is not about exaggeration," she said calmly. "It's about intent." Elaine turned to her. "Go on." Maya met Claire's gaze without flinching. "You wanted me gone," Maya said. "Not corrected, not guided, removed." Claire laughed lightly. "Paranoid." Maya continued, voice steady. You told me to resign quietly. You threatened escalation. You used my past to make me feel small. Silence thickened. Brian Keller shifted in his chair. Elaine turned to Brian. Mr. Keller, you were listed as a corroborating witness. Brian cleared his throat. I was present for some conversations. Alex's gaze cut to him. Which conversations? Brian hesitated. Claire expressed concern that Maya's background could complicate client relationships. Maya closed her eyes briefly. Elaine leaned forward. Did Ms. Thompson instruct you to collect information on Ms. Robinson? Brian's face reddened. I was asked to look into some things. Alex's voice was ice. Define some things. Brian swallowed. Her past. The room erupted in murmurs. Elaine raised a hand for silence. So, she said slowly, a senior manager conducted an unauthorized background investigation on a subordinate. Claire stood abruptly. This is absurd. I was protecting the company. Alex stood too. No, he said, voice controlled but dangerous. You were protecting your insecurity. Claire turned on him. You're biased. Alex didn't blink. I'm informed. Elaine looked between them. Alex, you've made your position clear, but the board must consider broader consequences. Alex nodded once. Then consider this. He slid a folder across the table. Projected losses if we alienate our top-performing sales executive, he said. Client trust erosion, talent attrition, and a public perception that Whitmore Solutions punishes success when it comes from the wrong background. Elaine scanned the pages. Her expression shifted. And, Alex continued, consider the legal exposure if it becomes known that this company allowed harassment, class discrimination, and unlawful data access. The General Counsel nodded. The risk is significant. Claire's voice shook now. So I'm the villain? Alex's gaze stayed fixed. You made yourself one. Elaine exhaled slowly. She looked at Maya. Ms. Robinson, she said, why stay? After everything. Maya took a breath. Because I didn't come this far to disappear, she said. And because if I leave quietly, you'll do this to the next person who doesn't fit. Silence followed. Elaine straightened. The board has reached a preliminary decision, she said. Everyone held their breath. Ms. Thompson is hereby suspended pending termination review, Elaine said. Mr. Keller will be placed on probation. Claire's face went white. And, Elaine continued, turning to Maya, your position remains secure, with full backing from this board. Maya's chest tightened, but she kept her face calm. Alex's jaw loosened slightly. Elaine wasn't finished. We will issue a public statement condemning the harassment and reaffirming our values, she said. And we will launch a company-wide review of internal culture. Claire laughed bitterly. This is a mistake. Elaine looked at her coolly. So was humiliating a woman for surviving. Security entered quietly. Claire's shoulders stiffened as she was escorted out. As the doors closed behind her, the room felt lighter and heavier at the same time. The war was over, but the fallout had only begun. Outside the boardroom, Maya finally exhaled. Her hands trembled now that it was safe. Alex turned to her. You held your ground. Maya looked at him. You risked the company. Alex met her gaze. I protected it. Their eyes lingered for a second too long. Something unspoken passed between them. Not gratitude, not debt. Recognition. Later that evening, as Maya packed up to leave, her phone buzzed. A new headline had dropped. Whitmore CEO stands by top sales exec after harassment scandal. Comments were different now. She earned her place. Respect to the CEO. This is leadership. Maya leaned back in her chair, exhausted. She had survived the fire, but the scars would remain, and so would Alex. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Have you ever had to fight for your dignity in a room that wanted you gone? Because in the next scene, the company begins to change, and something unexpected begins between Maya and Alex now that the war is over. Friday came with sunlight and a strange kind of quiet. The scandal still existed online, sure. The articles were still circulating. People still had opinions. But inside Whitmore Solutions, something had shifted. Not in a dramatic way. In the way a room changes when the bully finally gets removed, suddenly everyone remembers they have manners. Maya Robinson walked onto the sales floor at 8:18 a.m. and noticed the difference immediately. People said good morning, not loudly, not warmly, but they said it. A few coworkers avoided her eyes like they were ashamed. Others looked at her like she was something they didn't understand yet, someone who had survived a storm and didn't come out broken. Maya sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Her calendar was back. Meetings restored. Client calls rescheduled. Pipeline work waiting like nothing had happened. Work was the closest thing Maya had to stability, so she leaned into it. At 9:02, an email from executive admin appeared. Subject, 11:30, CEO, one-on-one, mandatory. Location, executive office, 48th floor. Maya stared at it. A one-on-one with Alex Whitmore. Mandatory. Her stomach tightened, not with fear exactly, with uncertainty, because a man like Alex didn't waste time. If he called you in, there was a reason. At 11:27, Maya stepped into the private elevator and rode up. The executive floor was quieter than the rest of the building. Softer carpet, cleaner air, a silence that felt expensive. She walked to the assistant's desk. "Ms. Robinson," the assistant said, "he's expecting you." The office door opened before she knocked. Alex stood inside, looking out at the skyline, hands in his pockets, same charcoal suit, same controlled posture, but his face looked tired today. Not weak, just human. "Maya," he said without turning. "Mr. Whitmore," she replied. "Close the door," he said. Maya did. The office felt like a separate world. Steel, glass, minimal decor, a room designed to hold control. Alex gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit." Maya sat, back straight, hands folded. Alex didn't sit immediately. He walked behind his desk and picked up a file. Then he looked at her. "I want you to hear this first," he said. Maya held his gaze. "You are not in trouble," Alex said. "And you're not being managed out." Maya exhaled slowly. "I assumed." Alex's eyebrow lifted slightly. "Did you?" Maya didn't answer. Alex sat down, opened the file, then closed it without reading it. "This isn't about paperwork," he said. "It's about reality." Maya's jaw tightened. "Reality is people tried to destroy me." Alex nodded once. "Yes." Silence hung for a moment. Then Alex spoke again, voice lower. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" he asked. Maya frowned. "Tell them what?" "Your background," Alex said. "Your past. The fact that you were vulnerable to this." Maya's eyes narrowed slightly. "Because it's not their business." Alex leaned back. "It became their business when it became a weapon." Maya's voice stayed calm. "So you want me to advertise my pain preemptively?" Alex's jaw tightened. "No," he said. "I want to understand you." That sentence landed differently. Maya's throat tightened slightly. She stared at Alex, studying his expression for any sign of manipulation. But Alex didn't flinch. He wasn't trying to charm her. He wasn't trying to soften her. He was just there, waiting. Maya spoke carefully. I didn't tell anyone because the moment you become the poor girl who made it, people stop seeing your work, Maya said. They see a story. Alex's gaze held steady. And stories, Maya continued, are easy to twist. Alex nodded slowly. They twisted yours brutally. Maya's voice tightened. They didn't twist it. They used it. Alex's eyes darkened for a second. And they failed. Maya stared at her hands. For the first time in 2 days, the adrenaline was gone. Only exhaustion remained. Alex's voice softened slightly. How's your mother? He asked. Maya's head snapped up. Alex's face remained calm, but there was something in his eyes. He had read the file. He had seen her mother's name. Maya's voice was quiet. She passed. Alex's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. Maya nodded once. Silence again. Then Maya asked the question that had been burning since the first moment Alex stepped into that compliance room. Why did you intervene? She asked. Really? Alex stared at her for a long moment, then stood and walked to the window again. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. Because I've seen what happens when people get humiliated for things they didn't choose, he said. Maya's chest tightened. You? Alex didn't turn. Not me. Maya waited. Alex exhaled. My father. Maya's breath caught slightly. Alex continued, voice controlled but heavier now. He grew up poor, Alex said. Not Bronx poor, but poor enough that people treated him like he was disposable. Maya stayed silent. My grandfather was wealthy, Alex said. Old money. He hated that my father married my mother. She was working class. Alex finally turned back. My father spent his whole life proving he deserved to exist in rooms he was never meant to enter, Alex said. He died still believing he was an outsider. Maya's throat tightened. Alex walked back to the desk and sat, eyes on Maya. When I saw what Claire did to you, Alex said, it didn't look like office drama. Maya whispered, it looked like a punishment. Alex nodded. Exactly. Maya stared at him. For the first time, she didn't see the CEO. She saw a man carrying something old. Alex slid a folder across the desk. What is this? Maya asked. A proposal, Alex said. A new initiative. Company-funded community outreach through sales partnerships, scholarships, internships, hiring pipelines. Maya frowned. Why are you showing me this? Alex's eyes held hers. Because I want you to lead it. Maya froze. Lead it? Yes, Alex said. Not as charity, as strategy. We expand talent, we build loyalty, we strengthen culture. Maya's voice tightened. And why me? Alex's answer was immediate. Because you know what it means to be underestimated, he said. And because you're the most effective person in this company when you decide something matters. Maya stared at the folder. It was power, real power, not symbolic, a chance to reshape the company that had tried to break her. Maya looked up slowly. This would put a target on my back again, she said. Alex nodded. Yes. Maya's eyes narrowed. So why offer it? Alex's voice lowered. Because hiding didn't protect you, and I'm done letting people like Claire decide who gets to belong. Maya felt something twist in her chest. Not fear, not gratitude, something more dangerous. Trust. And trust, for Maya, was terrifying. She stood slowly. I need time, she said. Alex nodded. Take it. Maya turned to leave. Her hand touched the door handle, and Alex spoke again. Maya. She paused. Alex's voice was quieter now, less CEO, more man. "Are you safe?" he asked. Maya frowned slightly. "Safe?" "Outside work," Alex said. "After what happened. Media, threats, people do stupid things." Maya's throat tightened, because yes, she'd received threats, not just texts. An envelope under her apartment door last night. "Go back to where you came from." She hadn't told anyone. She swallowed. "I'm fine." Alex's gaze sharpened. "Maya," he said quietly, "don't lie to me." Maya hesitated. Then, for the first time in years, she told someone the truth without dressing it up. "I got a note," she whispered. "At home." Alex's face went still. "What did it say?" he asked. Maya's voice was flat. "It told me to go back." Alex's jaw tightened so hard a muscle jumped. "Where do you live?" he asked. Maya hesitated. Alex held her gaze. "I'm not asking to control you. I'm asking to protect you." Maya's throat tightened. "I live in Harlem, near Frederick Douglass Boulevard." Alex nodded once. "Okay." Maya turned and walked out. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up, because Maya knew something now. Alex Whitmore wasn't just defending her as an employee, he was becoming emotionally involved, and that could ruin both of them. That evening, at 7:40 p.m., Maya left the building and stepped onto Fifth Avenue. The city air was cold. She walked toward the subway and froze. Across the street, leaning against a black SUV, stood Alex Whitmore. No suit jacket, just a dark coat, hands in his pockets. He looked out of place on the sidewalk like he didn't care. Maya's heart pounded. She walked closer, voice low. "What are you doing here?" Alex met her eyes. "Making sure you get home safe," he said. Maya's throat tightened. "That's not your job." Alex's voice was calm. "Then consider it my choice. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Have you ever had someone show up for you when you didn't know how to accept it? Because in the next scene, the danger escalates. Someone follows Maya, and Alex's protection becomes more than a gesture. And in the middle of fear, something real begins between them. The city at night can feel like freedom, or like a trap. Maya Robinson stood at the curb on Fifth Avenue, the wind slipping between buildings, and stared at Alex Whitmore like he'd just stepped out of someone else's life and into hers. He was there in a dark coat, no tie, no entourage, no corporate armor, just a tall white man with an expression that said he had already decided what he was going to do, and no one would talk him out of it. "I can take the train," Maya said quietly. Alex shook his head once. "Not tonight." Maya's jaw tightened. "This is inappropriate." Alex's eyes didn't move. "This is safety." Maya held his gaze, searching for arrogance, control, a savior complex, anything that would make it easy to push him away. But she saw something else. Worry. Real. She exhaled sharply, frustration mixing with exhaustion. "Fine," she said, "but you're not walking me to my door." Alex nodded. "I'll take what I can get." They got into the SUV. The driver pulled away smoothly, merging into Manhattan traffic. Inside the car, silence sat between them like an unasked question. Maya watched the lights pass by the window. "So," she said finally, voice flat, "you do this for every employee?" Alex looked at her. "No." Maya swallowed. "Then why me?" Alex didn't answer right away. He studied her profile, the controlled posture, the perfect calm that didn't match the tension in her shoulders. "You want the honest answer?" he asked. Maya didn't look at him. "Yes." Alex's voice dropped. "Because when I look at you, I see someone who refuses to break even when she's bleeding. Maya's throat tightened. She forced a small, bitter laugh. That's not romantic. Alex's tone stayed steady. It's not meant to be. Maya looked at him now. His face was calm, but there was something fierce underneath. And, Alex continued, because someone threatened you at home, that changes the rules. Maya stared out the window again, jaw tight. They crossed into Harlem. Frederick Douglass Boulevard. The neighborhood was alive even at night. Music from cars, people on stoops, a mix of energy and caution. The SUV slowed near Maya's building. Maya sat up straighter. Stop here. Alex's gaze flicked toward the sidewalk. No. Maya turned sharply. What do you mean, no? Alex's voice was low. That car's been behind us for 6 blocks. Maya froze. Her chest tightened. What car? She whispered. Alex nodded subtly toward the side mirror. A dark sedan, older model. No headlights, just the glow of streetlights sliding over its hood. It had turned when they turned, slowed when they slowed. Maya's throat went dry. It's probably nothing, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Alex's jaw tightened. It's not nothing. The driver asked calmly, Mr. Whitmore, should I take another route? Alex's answer was immediate. Yes, circle the block twice, then head toward the precinct. Maya turned toward him, eyes sharp with fear she hated showing. A precinct? She whispered. Are you serious? Alex met her gaze. I'm not playing with this. The SUV turned right, then left, then right again. Controlled, deliberate. The sedan followed. Maya's heart began pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, her hands clenched in her lap. This is my fault, she whispered. Alex's eyes narrowed. No, Maya swallowed. I should have just quit. If I quit, none of this happens. Alex's voice sharpened slightly. Stop. Maya looked at him, startled. Alex leaned in, low voice, intense. Do not blame yourself for other people's cruelty, he said. Not ever. Maya's breath shook. The driver spoke again, calm but urgent. They're still behind us. Alex nodded once. Call NYPD, he said. The driver did. Maya stared out the window, trying to process the fear. A boardroom betrayal was one thing, but this, being followed in the dark, this was a different kind of violation. The SUV turned onto a brighter street. Then, suddenly, the sedan accelerated. It pulled closer, too close. Maya's breath caught. Alex, she whispered. Alex's gaze locked on the rear view. The sedan flashed its high beams. Then it swerved slightly, as if testing space. Maya's hands went numb. The driver's voice remained controlled. We're 2 minutes from the precinct. The sedan surged again. Maya watched the driver's hands tighten on the wheel. Then the sedan swung left, trying to pull alongside them. Maya's body went rigid. She could see the outline of a man in the passenger seat. A phone raised. Filming. Maya's throat closed. They weren't just following her. They were hunting for something. A photo. A video. Proof. Proof that the CEO was with her. Proof to twist into scandal. Alex saw it too. His expression darkened. Don't look at them, he said quietly. Maya's breath trembled. They're recording. I know, Alex said. The SUV turned sharply and pulled into the precinct driveway. Bright lights, cameras, police vehicles. The sedan hesitated. It slowed. Then, like a coward exposed in daylight, it accelerated and sped away. Maya exhaled a shaky breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Her chest burned. Alex's voice was low. You okay? Maya nodded stiffly, but her hands were shaking. The driver parked. A uniformed officer approached, speaking with the driver through the window. Alex opened his door and stepped out. Maya didn't move at first. Her body felt locked. Then Alex turned back, held out his hand, not dramatic, not possessive, just steady. "Come on," he said quietly. Maya stared at his hand. She didn't want to take it. Taking it meant admitting she was afraid. Taking it meant leaning on someone, and Maya had built her entire life on not needing anyone. But her hands were shaking. She took his hand. His grip was firm and warm, grounding, not controlling. They walked into the precinct together. The officer took their statement. The driver showed the call record. They described the sedan, the direction it fled. Maya sat in a hard plastic chair, still in shock. Alex stood beside her, calm, composed, eyes scanning the room as if he could intimidate danger itself. When it was over, Maya finally spoke, voice hoarse. "This isn't just about my past anymore," she whispered. "It's about you." Alex looked down at her. "It's about us making sure you're safe." Maya swallowed. "They'll say you're involved with me." Alex's expression was steady. "Let them." Maya stared at him. "You don't care?" she asked. Alex's voice lowered. "I care," he said, "but not about their rumors." Maya's breath caught. Then Alex said the words that shifted everything. "I care about you." Silence hit. Maya stared at him as if her brain couldn't process the sentence, because nobody in her life had ever said that without wanting something from her. Not money, not attention, not obedience. But Alex, standing here in a precinct at night, looked like he wanted nothing except her safety. Maya's voice shook, barely. "You can't say that," she whispered. "You're my CEO." Alex held her gaze. "Then I'll say it differently," he replied, calm as stone. "I respect you," he said, "and I'm not going to pretend I don't feel something more." Maya's heart pounded dangerously. This was the line. Once crossed, it couldn't be uncrossed. Maya stood abruptly. "We should leave," she said, voice tight. Alex nodded. "Okay." On the ride back, Maya stared out the window, silent. At her building, she stepped out and faced Alex near the curb under the streetlight. "You shouldn't do this," she said quietly. Alex's eyes stayed on hers. "And you shouldn't be threatened for being successful." Maya swallowed hard. Then her voice softened, just a crack. "Thank you," she whispered. Alex nodded once. "Anytime." Maya turned toward the entrance, then paused. Without looking back, she said quietly, "Tomorrow, I want to tell you something." Alex's voice came calm behind her. "I'll be there." Maya walked inside, heart pounding, hands still shaking. Because now the danger was real. And now the feelings were real too. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Should a CEO ever cross the line for someone he cares about? Because in the next scene, Maya finally reveals the deepest part of her past, and Alex makes a decision that changes both of their lives forever. Saturday morning felt unreal, not because the city was quiet, New York is never quiet, but because Maya Robinson woke up and for the first time in days, the fear wasn't the first thing in her chest. It was the memory of Alex Whitmore's hand steadying hers in the precinct. It was the way his voice didn't shake when he said, "I care about you." Maya sat at the edge of her bed in her Harlem apartment, sunlight cutting through the blinds, and tried to breathe through the storm inside her. She had spent her whole life building walls, some walls to survive, some walls to succeed. But now those walls were starting to crack, because someone had looked at her pain and refused to step away. At 10:11 a.m., Maya's phone buzzed. "Alex. Coffee? 11:30. Neutral place. No pressure." Maya stared at the message for a long second. Neutral place. no pressure. That was Alex's way of respecting her boundaries while still showing up. Maya typed, Maya. Okay. The River Cafe. 1 Water Stay Brooklyn. A pause. Then, Alex. On my way. By 11:25, Maya stood outside the River Cafe in Brooklyn, coat pulled tight against the cold wind off the water. The place was elegant but warm. Brick walls, soft light, the Manhattan skyline across the river like a distant promise. Maya chose a table in the corner where she could see the entrance. Because survival instincts don't disappear just because someone is kind. At 11:31, Alex walked in. No suit today. Dark sweater, long coat, clean, controlled, but less corporate. He spotted her immediately and walked over. Maya, he said softly. Alex, she replied. He sat across from her, hands folded on the table. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Alex said quietly, How did you sleep? Maya's laugh was small and dry. I didn't. Alex nodded once, accepting that truth without pushing. Outside, water shimmered under winter light. Inside, Maya felt like she was standing on the edge of something dangerous. Alex spoke first. I had security review the footage around your building, he said. Maya's eyes narrowed. Footage. Alex's voice stayed calm. Your building has a camera system. We requested access through legal channels. The sedan wasn't random. Maya's stomach tightened. Who was it? Alex's eyes held hers. It was Brian Keller, he said. Maya froze, her breath caught. Brian? She whispered. Alex nodded. He wasn't alone, Alex continued. The sedan was registered to someone connected to Claire Thompson's partner. Maya's hands went cold. So, even after the board... Maya's voice cracked. Alex leaned forward slightly. They wanted proof, he said. Proof to smear you further. Proof to make it look like you were using me. Maya's throat tightened with anger so sharp it almost felt like nausea. They followed me, she whispered. Alex's jaw tightened. Yes. Maya stared out the window, trying to hold herself together. All her life, she'd believed success would buy safety, but it had bought a new kind of danger. Alex's voice lowered. Maya, he said, I can end this. Maya turned back. How? Alex held her gaze. Publicly, he said. A statement. A press conference if needed. We expose what they did. We press charges. Maya's heart pounded. Publicly. That meant spotlight. It meant everyone knowing. It meant her life becoming content again. Maya swallowed. And then what? Alex's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Then they learn, he said, that they can't bully people into silence. Maya's fingers curled against her cup. And what about you? She asked. They'll say you're doing this because you... She couldn't finish. Alex's eyes didn't flinch. Because I care, he said simply. Maya's throat tightened. She looked down at her hands, voice barely audible. I hate this, she whispered. I hate that my past is always a weapon. Alex stayed silent, letting her speak without interruption. Maya inhaled. Then she did something she almost never did. She told the truth without polishing it. When I was 17, Maya said quietly, my mom got sick. Real sick. Alex's posture didn't change, but his attention sharpened. She kept working anyway, Maya continued. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. She'd come home so tired, she couldn't even take off her shoes. Maya's eyes burned, but she kept going. And then one night, she whispered, we got evicted. Alex's jaw tightened slightly. We lost everything, Maya said. I slept in a shelter. Not long, just long enough to learn how fast people stop seeing you as human. She swallowed. I made a promise, Maya said. If I ever got out, I'd never go back. Not physically, not emotionally. Alex's voice was low. And you did get out. Maya nodded once. But I never escaped the fear, she whispered. The fear that someone would look at me and only see where I came from. Alex leaned forward. Maya, he said, I don't see your past as weakness. Maya's lips trembled slightly. Then what do you see? Alex didn't hesitate. I see discipline, he said. Intelligence, survival, and dignity. Maya's throat tightened. Alex's voice dropped lower. And if you let me, he said, I want to stand beside you, publicly, privately, however you choose, until you don't have to carry that fear alone. Maya stared at him, pulse racing. This wasn't a corporate conversation anymore. This was something else, and it terrified her because it felt real. She looked away again. People will assume things, she whispered. Alex nodded. They will. Maya's voice was tight. They'll say I used you. Alex's eyes stayed steady. Then we tell the truth, he said. Maya blinked. What truth? Alex's voice was calm. That you earned everything you have, he said, and that anyone who tried to destroy you broke the law. Maya stared at him. A part of her wanted to say no, to hide, to disappear, to go back to the old rule, survive quietly. But another part of her, deeper, stronger, was tired of running. Maya exhaled slowly. Okay, she whispered. Alex's gaze sharpened. Okay? Maya nodded once. We go public, she said. Not with my pain, with their wrongdoing. Alex nodded. Exactly. Maya's shoulders dropped slightly, like she'd been holding a weight for years, and finally set it down for 1 second. They left the cafe at 12:48. Alex insisted on walking her to the car. No touching, no drama, just presence. That night, Whitmore Solutions released a statement. It was short, direct, strong. It condemned harassment and unauthorized access, confirmed an active internal investigation, declared Maya Robinson's performance record as exemplary. It promised cooperation with law enforcement. And for the first time, the narrative wasn't about Maya being poor. It was about someone being criminal. By Monday morning, the office felt different again. Not quiet, tense. Emails flew. Conversations stopped. HR moved like a machine. At 10:15, news broke internally. Brian Keller was terminated, effective immediately. At 10:30, Claire Thompson's termination was finalized. At 11:00, a company-wide email from Alex appeared. Subject: Culture is not optional. Maya read it at her desk while the entire floor held its breath. Alex's message was blunt. Harassment will not be tolerated. Class discrimination will not be tolerated. Unauthorized leaks will be prosecuted. Performance is earned, not inherited. Then, the final line. If you cannot respect people who fought to be here, you do not deserve to be here. Maya stared at the screen, chest tight. People around her looked shaken. Some looked guilty. Some looked newly respectful. But the biggest shift, they looked afraid of being cruel now, because cruelty had consequences. At 4:50 p.m., Maya's phone buzzed. Alex. Roof terrace, 510. I want to ask you something. Maya's pulse jumped. At 5:10, she stepped onto the executive terrace. The sky was turning orange. The city below looked endless. Alex stood near the railing, hands in his coat pockets. He turned as she approached. Maya, he said softly. She stopped a few feet away. What did you want to ask? Alex's eyes held hers, calm but intense. I want to date you, he said. Maya froze. Just like that. Not vague, not hidden. Direct. Her throat tightened. That's complicated, she whispered. Alex nodded. I know. Maya's voice shook. You're my CEO. Alex's gaze stayed steady. Then I'll step back from direct oversight, he said. We'll do it properly. HR, ethics, paperwork. I'll do whatever it takes to make it clean. Maya stared at him. He was offering real sacrifice, real adjustment, not for control, for respect. Maya inhaled slowly, trying to steady herself. Why me? She whispered again. Alex stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. Because you're the strongest person I know, he said, and because when I'm with you, I don't want to be the CEO. Maya's eyes burned. Alex, she whispered. He waited. Maya swallowed hard. Then she nodded once. One date, she said. No headlines. No promises. Alex's mouth lifted slightly, not a smile of conquest, but relief. One date, he agreed. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Should love be allowed to grow after a storm like this? Because in the final scene, their relationship becomes real. The world watches, and Alex makes the one promise Maya has been waiting her whole life to hear. And this time, it ends in a ring. Love doesn't arrive loudly after a war. It arrives carefully, one honest conversation at a time. Maya Robinson and Alex Whitmore didn't announce anything. No press release, no leaked photos, no whispers fed to gossip blogs. They started with dinner. A quiet restaurant on the Upper West Side. No suits, no titles, just two people sitting across from each other, learning how to speak without armor. Alex listened more than he talked. Maya noticed that. She noticed how he never interrupted when she spoke about work, about fear, about the way success still felt temporary in her bones. And Alex noticed how Maya laughed differently now, less guarded, still cautious, but real. They dated slowly, intentionally. Alex formally recused himself from any direct oversight of Maya's role. HR documented everything. Boundaries were set. Transparency was absolute. People noticed. Of course they did. The office buzzed again, but this time the tone was different. Not cruel, curious. Some admired them. Some resented them. Some waited for it to fall apart. But Maya no longer flinched at attention. She had learned something important. She was not surviving anymore. She was choosing. 3 months later, the media found out anyway. They always do. A photo surfaced. Maya and Alex walking together in Central Park, autumn leaves catching in Maya's hair, Alex smiling at her like the world had finally quieted down. The headlines came fast. CEO confirms relationship with top exec after harassment scandal. Power couple or power imbalance? Maya read them calmly at her kitchen table. Alex watched her, tense. Do you want me to shut this down? He asked. I can... Maya shook her head. No, she said quietly. Let them talk. Alex searched her face. Are you sure? Maya met his eyes. I've spent my whole life running from other people's opinions, she said. I'm done. They released a joint statement. Simple, direct. Yes, they were together. Yes, safeguards were in place. Yes, Maya Robinson's career stood on her own merit. The internet reacted the way it always does. Some cheered, some doubted, some tried to dig up more dirt. But there was no more dirt. Only facts. Only consistency. Only two people refusing to apologize for choosing each other. 6 months later, Maya stood on the same rooftop terrace where Alex had asked her on that first date. The city lights stretched endlessly below them. Alex stood behind her, arms loose at her sides, not claiming, not trapping. "Maya," he said softly. She turned. He was holding a small velvet box, her breath caught, not in shock, but recognition. "I'm not here to rescue you," Alex said quietly. "You never needed that." Maya's eyes filled. "I'm here because I choose you," he continued. "Every version of you. The woman you are, the girl you were, the strength you built when no one was watching." He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, elegant, unshowy. "Maya Robinson," Alex said, voice steady. "Will you marry me?" The city hummed below them. For a moment, Maya didn't speak. She thought of her mother, of shelters and evictions, of boardrooms and humiliation, of standing alone in rooms that wanted her gone. Then she looked at Alex. "I'm not marrying you because you're powerful," she said softly. "I'm marrying you because you see me." Alex's eyes shone. "Yes," Maya said. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. They married the following spring, not in a ballroom, not in a place that screamed wealth. They married at a restored community space in Harlem, 3 blocks from the apartment Maya once thought she'd never escape. Maya walked down the aisle alone, not because she had no one, but because she wanted to. Alex waited at the altar, eyes locked on her like she was the only thing left in the world. Their vows were simple, honest. Alex promised never to diminish her light. Maya promised never to shrink herself again. When they kissed, the room didn't erupt. It exhaled. Years later, when people asked Maya how she made it, she never mentioned Alex first. She talked about discipline, about resilience, about refusing to disappear. And when they asked Alex what changed him, he answered honestly, "Loving someone who survived taught me what strength actually looks like." If you're listening to this story and it moved you, even a little, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. Like the video, leave a comment, and tell us, have you ever been judged for where you came from instead of who you became? Because Maya Robinson was never small. The world just stood too close. And sometimes, love isn't about saving someone. It's about standing beside them while they claim the life they already earned.